So we have Matthew Burns over here, player one with 27 points so far today. He's playing the Ruby Amethyst deck, and then Brennan DeCandio, like you said, with 27 points
All
on the
right.
Sapphire Steel deck. And we have both players have already taken turn one, I think. We have Popsicle, of course, is like the perfect
Was haben
opening
wir
for a Sapphire
Sapphire
Steel
Steel
deck.
gegen
And
Ruby
nothing
Amethyst?
here yet on Matthew's side.
Yeah, Matthew can take his time and develop. He doesn't have to come roaring out of the gates in this matchup too much because it's more about his 2 drops and his 3 drops in this matchup that are better. Flynn Rider and Sisu on turn 3 are the real winners for him.
Absolutely.
Flynn Rider can get a lot of lore early because Brennan does not do a great job of checking that early in the game. And then if you get Sisu out, it is something that Brennan has a very hard time trading into 1-for-1 in the matchup. It creates a problem with, it having too much strength and having 4 willpower can be a lot of a problem. So turn 2, really important for both of them. We're over on Brennan's side. Does he have one jump ahead here, or is this one of the slower draws where he's going to be relying on Quill? That's the big answer.
Yeah, and
hat
it
one
is
jump
that
ahead.
one jump ahead, like you said, which that is a song, which he uses Ink to play and adds another card into his Inkwell. It's exerted, of course, so he can't play another character or anything this turn, but really helping with that ramp. So that's what Blue Steel is known for. The Sapphire decks all can ramp
Kommt jetzt noch ein Frenemy.
build up that
Ja.
Inkwell very quickly.
Jetzt natürlich die
Speaking of
Frage,
Brennan,
wenn
we see
Brennan
two
jetzt
of
in
them
die
here.
Ramme
Two.
legt,
One played for Matt Burns in here.
kassiert
This is kind of what I'm
Matthew
talking
erstmal
about.
3
So
Lore.
the fact that Brennan can play, say, like Haversam here, and like that's a very
Ist die
powerful
Frage,
play
ob man das
when Rang's
trotzdem
drawing
macht.
cards. But immediately Flynn's going to go and get 3 lore, possibly quest into another one, and that's a lot off of a 2-drop. So,
Aber wenn man jetzt
Brennan coming off of a top 8 in Chicago,
Flavor
played this deck
Sham
very
macht,
famously there, did really well with it.
dann
He's actually changed up his list a little bit coming into this. One of the biggest changes was he went up to 4 copies of the card Baboom.
könnte sogar auch
And
noch
this
direkt
is a card
vorkommen.
in general that he's like kind of targeting. Besides, obviously, Bucky and Diablo and things like that. Things like Flynn Rider are a problem for this deck, especially on the draw. I just wanted to have more early things to deal with. Speaking
hat
of early draws,
AWNW.
there's the Haversam getting put.
Yeah, put in the Inkwell. What do you think about that instead of seeing
Interessant.
it played down on the board?
You know what? I
Mit
kind of
AWNW
like it in
macht
this
es Sinn.
matchup. Haversam is a very powerful card, but its real power is when it starts to quest as well. It gets the 2 cards when it comes to play, and then you quest it. You don't know if Brennan's going to have a second way to quest here because, yeah, he might use the Popsicle, but he might not want to get rid of the Fishbone Quill. The other problem is this. The decks have 4 copies of Brawl in this matchup, and that is the only card in your deck that Brawl can hit. So if you never put a Haversam to play, they never have a target for Brawl. And so that's pretty awesome for you if you can kind of like strand that card in their hand or not give them a good target.
Yeah, which it doesn't look like Matthew has Brawl in his hand, but he does have that Sisu, which that Flynn Sisu, turn 2,
Was
turn
sind die denn?
3
Die sind
is like the perfect line of play that every
3-0-2
Amethyst player
diese
wants to
Leute.
see. Of course, that Sisu gaining
Da muss es doch
one
bessere
strength
Matchups
for
eigentlich
every
geben, aber
card in
vielleicht wollen sie uns ja
your
mal ein bisschen
opponent's
Abwechslung in den
hand.
Matchups zeigen. Das ist ja
So at this
interessant.
point, early in the game,
Ich würde zwar
those
denken, dass
players do
Sapphire
have
Steel
a
vor
pretty
allem
full
mit
hand.
AWNW fett
Another
vorne ist
problem
gegen
for
Ruby
Haversam here
Amethyst.
as well.
Wir haben
You're
genau dieses
drawing 2
Matchup schon
cards when it
gesehen.
gets played, you're drawing 2 cards
Naja.
when it gets exerted. So when you exert it, yeah, you'll draw 2 cards, but they will immediately turn Sisu into a challenge,
Yes.
and you're going to have enough cards for it to take
For
down
it to
that
take
Haversam.
down Flaversham, yes. But man, okay, this is seeing Tinkerbell come down already is pretty amazing. Again, the power of that ramp. Tinkerbell is a 6-cost card. The fact that Brennan was able to play it this soon. What do you think
Ja,
about
nächste
this
Runde kommt der
Tinkerbell?
AWNW.
One of the best cards in the entire game. Tinkerbell, I know, I've heard stories because I wasn't around, but in sets 1 and 2, this might have been the most powerful card, or one of the
I
most powerful
think
cards
it
in
was
Lorcana.
really popular.
And we're starting to see the power of it here because not only is it putting damage on your opposing characters, but the threat of it ever getting to challenge a character and then take out another character, because it's normally going to be able to do that in this matchup, is huge. Not only that, here's the thing. Anytime Brennan gets a 5 or 6 cost character into play, you always worry about his next turn, because that's when this deck really starts to sing.
Yes.
I think it's the right way to put it here.
Yes.
Because anytime these get
Tja,
to sing
Brennan,
something
jetzt
like
kommt's.
Along Came Zeus, A Whole New World, or anything like that,
Haben
Brennan's
leer
gonna start to
gespielt,
pull forward
letzte
ahead, because
Handkarte
he's done
AWNW.
such
Aber
an
vielleicht
ink
vorher noch
advantage
Grab
that
Your
he's gonna start
Sword.
to really be able to leverage that.
Ist aber eher
You're
nicht so
seeing,
toll, ne?
Matthew having one of the ideal starts here, Flynn Rider into Sisu, but he's probably not as far ahead as you would hope to be in a matchup where you
Was
have
ist
your
das
ideal
für eine
start.
Karte?
Yeah, and Brennan does have a couple of really strong
At AWNW,
song
Grab Your
cards in
Sword
his
und noch
hand. He has
irgendwas.
both A Whole New World and Grab Your Swords. So it looks like he has quite a few options here. He has the Tinkerbell as well. So, Matthew, of course, doesn't know that those songs are hiding
Hercules
in his
mit
hand.
Bodyguard.
But what do you think, Brennan, knowing what he knows, what do you think he's hoping to not see on Matthew's side?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a single card he's hoping not to see here. In fact, I think he's actually hoping that Matthew doesn't do
Ja, dann kann man immer noch
too
gut
much
nächste
here to
Runde
play
ziehen.
tuning cards because it looks like he's setting up a whole new world for the next turn.
Sisu macht
He
jetzt
put
erstmal
the
nichts.
Hercules into play in bodyguard mode here, which is pretty good. It's going to make sure that Tinkerbell stays around. He's going to have a character here to possibly sing the whole new world because that's when you get the
Ist
real
das der
strength
mit
of the
The
card.
Resist
You're
1,
not
ne?
actually paying ink for it. You're getting just to tap one of your characters and stuff as well. Because you actually saw him take the Tinkerbell and attack into the
Interessante
castle here.
Choice.
That's a problematic card as
Aber
well.
beschützt jetzt natürlich die
Like I said,
Tinkerbell,
this is one of the nightmare starts from
die
Matthew
sonst
Burnside
möglicherweise
DeCandio,
mit so
and he's
Maui
actually in a
abgetradet
pretty
wäre.
good position from here.
Yeah, that
Aber
Queen's
so
Castle
wird
is
Matthew
such
nicht
a
beide
strong
upgraden
card.
können.
I've seen it
Und
help
Tinkerbell wird
players
überleben.
win games. So
Das heißt, mit
Brennan
Tinkerbell
really
wird man
trying
noch
to take care
AWNW
of it
singen,
quickly is gonna be,
beziehungsweise das
really
Castle
important,
abräumen
I
können.
think.
Ich vermute mal,
And
das
Matthew has to
Castle
be
wird
kind of
abgeräumt
conscious here
werden.
too. He needs to make sure that his next turn isn't going to be, that Brennan's next turn is going to be bad for him. He has to start worrying about something like a whole new world. He has to worry about draw your sword. He has to worry about a second copy of Tinkerbell and making sure none of that happens too badly for him here. The other problem is, don't forget,
Ich kann mit
Hercules
den
has
beiden
resistance
Karten aber
on here,
nicht
so there's not
Herkules
a lot
abarbeiten.
of really good attacks from here.
Weil
because
Brennan nur
Brennan
eine
got
Handkarte
cards
hat,
at
kann
his
er
hands,
nur
so
4
Sisu
Schaden machen,
now
diese Runde.
only has 2 strength.
Das heißt, er kann echt kaum irgendwas
so
machen.
that's 2 strength, and he does have a fox that came down, but again, because that resist,
kann
what
nur
do you
die
think
beiden-
Matthew's best
Er kann den
line
Frenemy
is
wieder
here?
rauslegen.
So I'm wondering if you're supposed to start to challenge some of your cards
Ja.
into this. I don't think you do. I think what Matthew's doing is probably what is best for him here, and just get a bunch of your characters into play here.
Wobei, er hat
Use your
gerade nur
ink
einen
in your
Inkbild auf
hand
der
as
Hand und
much as you
Doppel-B
can, because
prepared.
It's likely
Aber die
you're getting a
Doppel-B
whole
werden jetzt auch noch
world,
abgeworfen.
Yeah, and unfortunately, if that does happen, those 2 be prepared
Ja.
are gonna go into the discard.
Yeah, this is really important. I'm glad you pointed that out. That's 2 copies of Be
2.
Prepared here, and that's 2 of the most powerful cards that Matthew
Das
has
ist
in
echt
this
stark,
matchup,
2 Be
because
Prepared
it's his only
abzuwerfen.
reset button. You know, we
Vor
talked
allem
about
überhaupt
this
den
now
Gegner
that
3
sometimes
abzuwerfen,
his
während man selber gar keine
challenges aren't as
abwirft.
good in this matchup because the characters are
Fett
so
3
big
zu 1
on
der
the side.
AWNB.
And he needs to be able to keep the board as clear as possible, because if Brennan
Beziehungsweise
starts to amass
8
too
zu
much of one,
10
he's never going to
genau
keep up
genommen,
in
aber-
value and rate.
Yeah, and
Also
you know,
10
some
zu 8
players will
getradet.
run for
Da
Be
weg ist das
Prepared,
Castle.
but some only 3, so you know,
Jetzt
by
kommt noch Tamator.
using those 2 with Whole New World. Besides that, you know, what are
Na,
the
es kommt
answers
mehr
do you
Tinkerbell.
think that Matthew's looking for on his side?
A couple more foxes, and
Und
so
dann nochmal
here's the
Boom
thing.
auf den Sisu.
Matthew's
Yeah.
drastically here. You know, he's starting to fall behind on the board in size. He's going to start to fall behind in lore very soon once Brennan decides to turn the corner and start, you know, actually generating lore.
Ja.
The thing that he needs to do here is start to develop a board as much as possible from here. The problem is he's at such an ink disadvantage that Brennan's going to be able to keep pushing the forward with his stuff, and then
Ja, das
maybe,
sieht doch
you know,
aus,
play
als
a
ob
whole
Brennan
world
das schon
again.
im Sack
He's never
hätte.
going to run out of gas. So Matthew has to be as efficient as possible with his cards here, while developing a better position on the board and developing as much lore as possible, because he needs to start making.
Gegen
Brennan
Emeralds
have to
Tier
make
sind diese
tough
Whole New
choices
World
here.
natürlich super die
Yeah.
Liability.
He does have a brawl.
Ich meine, die
with
sind
his
geil, um
next
sich damit auf sie
game.
wieder
He has
hochzuziehen, wenn
another
die Hand leer
Queen's
ist.
Castle, which I
Aber die werden halt
wonder
auch von der
if
Ursula
we'll see.
abgeworfen und so. Und die sind alle
Those,
Inkable
again,
erstmal.
those 2 Tinkerbells on
Deswegen,
Brennan's
ich
side
weiß
of the
nicht so
board
genau.
are gonna be, and that you can't even
Diesen
you know,
Herkules.
do anything about them because of that bodyguard that's
interessant.
out there.
Yeah, maybe Matthew needs to start finding his copies of King Undisputed. The problem is there's
Da hätte ich auch
Hercules
nicht
there
unbedingt
protecting
erwartet,
the
dass man den oft
Tinkerbells. You
sehen
start
wird.
getting them off the board. You start getting through these things as much
Aber
as
jetzt
possible,
gerade macht er
so
sich ja gut.
your characters are free to quest. That is the biggest squeeze that he's in right now, is if he ever starts
Ist
questing,
erstaunlich.
he runs the risk of losing not
Aber okay.
one, but multiple characters to single challenges from Brennan.
Yeah. And he does play a rabbit here to draw a card. He got a friends,
man ja mal
which,
machen.
you know, to help him dig through his deck and find some more answers, which he does use Madame Mim Fox to sing. He got a goat and a snake. Not maybe the answers he was looking for.
Hey,
Nee, nicht die
you're seeing
Druiden,
how Brennan's
nach denen er gesucht hat.
leveraging his deck into making this a more palatable matchup than it generally is. And sometimes, I know that when I first started playing this matchup, I did not win a lot at all on the blue-steel side. I lost a lot. What he's doing is he's setting the terms of combat here.
Yeah.
And he's making Matthew have to play a game that he doesn't want to, where, hey, look, you're going to need to challenge my characters to get out of this here. And Matthew's characters don't challenge well into this board.
Yeah. Yeah, even the
Kommt
characters
jetzt
that he has,
vielleicht
they can't really do much
Cogsworth?
damage at all to
Ich
what
glaube nicht, dass ich
Brennan has
Tamator
out
unbedingt
on
noch
the
hinlegen
board.
würde. Man muss ja am Ende
And
doch Angst haben, dass noch
because
so
of
das
that
dritte Be
Hercules
Prepared kommt
out,
vielleicht.
that Flynn that's
Wobei dann
sitting there
wiederum er so
isn't
viele
doing
Handkarten.
anything for him.
Ja, why
exactly.
not?
Flynn is pretty much a dead card here at this point, and you're seeing Brennan really start to turn the corner here. And I've got to believe
Ja, jetzt
that
kann man doch
this
noch
is a Damage
Cogsworth
Token.
inken
This
und
is
noch
how
ein,
Brennan's
oder
gonna win
irgendwas
the
inken
game
mit
very
Fischbonquelle und
quickly.
noch
This
einen
plus
Popsicle
if he has a
legen.
lucky
Yes.
dime, is going to gain 10 to 12 lore in a turn.
Ich würde vielleicht den
depending on how
Grab Your
many
Sword
items he
inken.
has. I don't know if Brennan would play this early in the game. I know I say early. It's a little bit, but like this early in the game because this generally goes really long. I don't know if he would play this early if those 2 Be Prepareds hadn't been discarded earlier for the whole new world, because there's a chance that Matthew, I mean, he's got a ton of cards in his hand, but the odds of him having are a lot lower.
Yeah, Brennan saw those 2 Be Prepareds go into the discard, so he probably felt very safe putting that Tamatoa out there.
Yeah, you can see you go ahead and start to lore up here. I think it was a lore for 5, 6 here total.
Nächste Runde hat er schon gewonnen, oder was?
Yeah, and that Tamatoa right now, of course, he quests for 1 on his own, but then he gets an extra 3 lore for those
16.
other items that he has out. So Tamatoa is questing
entweder
4,
Lucky Dime oder noch 4 Items.
And Hercules
4 Items auch
are
nicht so
all
ultra unrealistisch mit AWNW.
A lot of lore, and Brennan, you know, in lore was quite behind.
Andererseits, wenn man AWNW hardcastet,
you know, this
Lucky Dime nicht mehr.
Can turn very quickly, and we can see now that's 6.
Wobei vielleicht doch, ne? Er hat so 10. Das heißt, es ginge sogar doch. Ah, ne, ist doch nicht. Weil auf 12 kann er kommen, dann kann er den Dime zwar noch legen und AWNWen, aber dann kann er nicht mehr aktivieren. Das heißt, vielleicht ist es das Bessere. Jetzt gleich nächste Runde noch AWNW zu singen, in der Hoffnung, dass man den Dime zieht.
Yes.
And then you have to keep Matthew as well on a certain turn, a certain amount. You have to keep him below, say, like 15,
Weil dann ist es genau lethal, ne? Mit Lucky Dime
cool
ist das 4. Item. Dann hat, okay, jetzt nicht mehr.
You're drawing a lot of extra cards from the game, so they can set that hand up. So that's what Matthew's
Jetzt braucht er
trying
noch
to
ein
find
Item
here.
mehr dann.
I think
Aber kann man ja trotzdem mal machen.
trying to get control of the board back without finding one of his Be Prepared.
Ich denke mal nächste Runde noch ein AWNW und dann ein bisschen Glück kann Brennan schon Lethal gefunden haben.
I guess you just have to try to race in lore.
Und warum auch nicht? Du hast ja viel weniger Hand kann als der Gegner.
Really difficult, yeah. And of course that Bee King Undisputed lets Brennan pick which card he's going to banish, and he chose one of his 2 Tinkerbells that he had out. So
yeah. The second one is extra. The first one,
yes.
the threat of the first
yeah,
one
jetzt
is
noch AWNW.
Keeping the bodyguard around is really important, and you don't want to get rid of Tamatoa here because of the power of it, you know, questing for 4, 5, 6 every single turn. And all right, here's the start of this for Matthew. He's going to have to start attacking into this Hercules, and look, it's not great. This is what I was talking about earlier.
Ja.
You need at least 2 attacks.
Das muss er aber echt machen, damit er nicht gleich schon vernichtet ist.
He does. He trades both of his
Jetzt kann Brennan wahrscheinlich doch nicht mehr lethaln. Vor allem mit 4 Handkarten willst du auch nicht AWNW einfach so auf Verdacht, jetzt Lethal zu haben. Wobei, da ist schon mal ein Popsicle. Das bedeutet, jetzt kann man vielleicht doch noch was reinlegen und noch Tamatoa reinlegen.
Pretty good at this point. He still has the
krass,
Tamatoa.
Ne?
He does it with a bunch of items. He still has one of his Tinkerbells. Like, I don't.
Weil er würde
how do you think he's
gewinnen
feeling right
im
now?
Moment, ne?
I think he's feeling like he can't possibly lose this
Er würde
game
nicht
from this
gewinnen.
point. He's got a whole new world in his hand, another Tamatoa.
Another Tamatoa.
If something happens to the first one, and he's got to grab your swords here.
Ja,
just
ich glaube,
in
ich würde
case
es einfach ruhig
Matthew
playen.
decides, look, I've got to try to race on lore. I'm going to go wide, play 3 or 4 characters turn, and then Brennan's waiting in the wings to just take care and sweep all that up. It's going to take some monumental heroic stuff from
Aber man
Matthew
könnte
to
noch
get
Grab
back
Your
in the
Sword
game
ausspielen für
at this point,
5.
even though he's technically leading in lore right now.
Yeah,
Jetzt macht er erstmal noch
lead
4
is
Lore.
not by much though, because we've seen Brennan really pick up the
Jetzt
pace,
hat Brennan wieder
stepping
alles
on the
mehr.
gas,
Charakter,
doing
Tinte.
very
Ne, Handkarten hat er
good,
nicht mehr.
You know, questing with Tamatoa, and now he is.
Aber
up to
egal, er
10
macht jetzt noch
lore,
Grab Your Sword, glaube ich.
And yeah, it's really
Einfach für
seeing
5.
the scales have tipped the other
Dann ist bei
direction
Matthew
very
alles
quickly.
verbannt.
Yeah, he's getting to do. And
Zack.
here we go, see the grab your
There's his
swords.
grab
We're
your
gonna-
swords.
Yeah,
Yep.
this is going to go ahead and just take
Wenn
care of
Matthew jetzt nicht das
everything
dritte Be
actually
Prepared
from
von uns
Matthew
sieht.
Brennan's side of the board. And we're going to see Brennan doing one of my favorite things.
Und selbst wenn er
with
es
Tamatoa
sieht.
here. If you get to have it in play multiple turns, even if you don't have a ton of items in play, if you have something like Popsicle in play, you can sacrifice the Popsicle anytime you want, even if you're not getting value off of it, which there's sometimes you can. You can get some
Sacrifice, sagt er.
damage off of some of these
Hat er
characters.
vielleicht auch
But
mal
it puts it
mitgespielt.
into the discard pile, and then
Aber der ist ja auch
plus
der
the Tamatoa.
Kompetente
Yeah,
von
you
denen.
lose 1 lore, but you get it back, and then you get to draw another card, so you keep the gas going.
Yeah.
And, we're just looking for Lucky Dime here at this point. Even though Brennan doesn't really need it to win from here, it would seal the game immediately.
Yeah, if he keeps both Tamatoa and Tinkerbell, if nothing changes about this board state, he'll quest for 7 next turn, and so then at this point the game would be over in 2 turns unless Matthew can find something here. But
Yeah,
I'm not sure. Besides that, be prepared. There's really
Nee, es
not
geht
much.
nichts mehr.
Yeah,
Be
it's just
Prepared hätte man jetzt
The
machen
fact that
müssen.
one character was left over besides the Tamatoa is, you could tell Brennan was very much trying to do that. He was trying to make sure that 2 characters stay on the board. In fact, he doesn't have it in
Matthew
his
is
list, but this
defeated,
is one of
yes.
the reasons that some people play the Mickey Mouse version of
Yes,
this.
the
So they
Mickey
have
Mouse Detective.
so they have
Yes.
a leftover character sitting around to
Yep.
give up for being undisputed.
Yep. And I think that he just, Matthew played the rabbit. I think.
Ja, wenn Mickey Mouse liegt, ist es nur so Be King disputed.
So not the answers he was hoping.
You got a feel for Matt here. His opener was really good for this matchup in particular, and it just wasn't enough. So this is one of those games you just got to tip your cap to your opponent where, look, you did what you're supposed to do. You played fine. You drew well, but like your opponent's hand just, it had what it needed to beat you from here.
Yeah. And that whole new
Brennan
world
super den saftigen Draw.
I mean, that was the
hat auch nice gespielt, wer sich dazu entschieden hat, den hier Ram in die Tinte zu legen und den Fishbone-Quell stattdessen zu machen, auf die whole new world zu gehen.
Yeah, it was a game that looked like it was in a good spot for Matthew, and then Brennan's like, no, we're actually in my world. You're just
war jetzt nicht so super skilled, aber man muss schon ein bisschen aufpassen. Der hat auch diesen Oliver Kahn.
Over here on Brennan's side with that Tamatoa, and is that another whole new world?
That is another whole new world.
Wow.
I think so.
Da hätte man sich echt überlegen können, aufzugeben an Matthews Stelle, um die 5 Karten nicht zu zeigen. Aber dann wiederum, es gibt nicht so interessante...
Oh,
yeah.
And he found the lucky dime, and there it is. Yeah.
And speaking of ink and how much Brennan has this turn, I want to talk about the card that he had face up in his inkwell there while we're waiting for the next one. It's Argus. So it's just a random common, and I saw some people starting to play it in this matchup, and Brennan started playing it, and
Argus?
I was wondering, this card, to me, it seems out of place. You know, it's not as powerful as the other one. It's not an item early. It's so big, and especially this kind of matchups, because it answers Flynn Rider, it answers Sisu early, it can challenge, it can attack down a castle with multiple attacks, or I'm sorry, challenge down a castle with multiple challenges and stuff. And so for a common that's just a 4-1 for 2 that quests for 1, I was like, yeah, I wasn't impressed with this. Then you see that it just answers so many of your problems in the matchup. So another piece of technology just for this matchup. So that's why I was saying earlier that I do think it's actually advantaged on the other side away from Blue Steel, because Blue Steel has to make so many concessions to make the match palatable.
To make it work for this matchup, which, I mean, when you're going into a tournament like this, though, that's what you have to do. You have to think about what are the decks that I'm most likely to see out there? What are the cards that I need to have that will put me in the best position to win those matches? And we can see that Brennan did, and it had worked out in his favor in this first game of this match.
And speaking about that, about like what it's going to take to be in the favor, let's talk about what's going to happen for Matthew Burns. For him to be better in game 2 and to make this a 1-1 match, he's going to have either a similar start to that one and not have Brennan have all the answers and, you know, his best possible draw. You know, if his draw doesn't match up perfectly for that, that's great. If he doesn't have a boom, he doesn't have Argus or anything like that. Or if he can make the game go a little bit longer and actually stick a few characters,
aber finde ich schön, dass sie den Boost am Start haben und nicht die fliegenden Köpfe im Lorcana-Weltall.
Merlin, Goat, Madam Mim kind of, you know, bounce and stuff. He can win games from spots that look really, really bad by just questing a bunch and then gaining a bunch of lore without ever questing.
Yeah, and Ruby Amethyst, I mean, when you get to the late game, if they can start bouncing those goats, I mean, they can close out games when you're least expecting it. So, yeah, let's jump into game 2 and see if Matthew can pull this one out or if Brennan is going to take home another win.
Das Matchup ist ja stark für Brennan auf jeden Fall.
Both players have already altered their opening hands. They're just getting ready to start. I believe Brennan was on the play last time, so Matthew's going to start us out.
That's huge here as well. Matthew being on the play this game, and this is one of the better ones to start off with, Turnbox followers. I love this card. This is a really good litmus test for how much you understand your matchups. And it's just such a great card because, look, if Brennan doesn't have a lot of answers early, this is going to get a ton of lore in.
Litmus test for much how you understand your matchups. Ja, dieser Man.
But also, if your hand doesn't work out, right? You know, if you've rearranged
your
hand,
flex.
You're missing your 2-drop, you're missing your 3-drop. I just need another Inkable. You can go ahead and quest for this and change it into a card. I think this is one of the best 1-drops the entire game. I think this is just a very well-rounded, well-designed card that does so many little things that you don't necessarily notice in the game.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it again and again today that turn 1, Ruby Amethyst puts down Chernobog's followers. He's questing, and of course, this card has the ability where when you quest, you can choose to banish it, but you don't have to draw a card. And because there's no threats on the board here on Brennan's side, Matthew's just questing and leaving it there on the board, so he gets to choose when he wants to banish it.
Yeah, not having a Flynn Rider here is huge for
yeah,
Brennan.
Aber ob ich den Turn
nicht schon gebanished hätte, den Flynn Rider von oben zu ziehen.
Yeah, that's huge for Brennan. That takes a lot of pressure off him because the Flynn would have gotten at least 3 to 4 lore this game, if not more. Plus, you've got the Chernobog's followers starting early. Then we're going to have the Sisu behind this. He would have been really far behind very, very early in this game. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and just the Popsicle and the Fortisphere so far on Brennan's side. We didn't
aber
see
jetzt
that
gleich
one
kommt
jump
der
ahead
Fishbone-Quill, dann
like
kommt der
we saw
Hiram.
last time to help build up his Inkwell. What do you think Brennan's looking for?
So here's the thing. Both of his Inks cards are the same one. They're both Quills.
Yeah.
I have to believe there's a third quill.
A third quill?
Yeah, there's no way that we don't have a third quill here when you don't have a 1 jump ahead and you're already inking them. So
alle 4 Quill gezogen.
Look
Crazy.
At that. He has 2 more in his hand.
So he just has all 4?
He has all 4 quills. Nice. He's going to ink the other one and then play.
So is this triple ink of Fishbone Quill into... Oh, there we go. Emperor the Showman. Yeah. 4 of a kind dealer. What do I win?
Oh my goodness! Can you imagine having an opening?
Grab your sword reinlegen?
Yeah, he probably kept 1 and then drew 3
of them. Yes, I've had games like that before.
Nee, lieber Beast, glaube ich.
You should know it too. If your opponent is ever in something like a blue steel deck, if they're ever putting down their quills face up in turn 1 or 2, and especially if they don't 1 jump ahead, there's more behind this.
There's more coming. Yeah, any of those cards that are like powerhouse cards, and you see it go into the inkwell on the turn that it could be played, there's another.
Dass die Ink revealed hat, war natürlich eigentlich banned. Aber alle hatten Spaß, keiner hat was gesagt, finde ich nice.
By the way, what does Brennan need here coming
Ist ja nichts passiert.
He needs a fishbone quill, and he had
4 of them.
Yes. Yeah, which again for the Sapphire Steel, that's what you want to see. You want to be able to ramp, get up to those high cost cards as quickly as possible. Especially, I think, in this matchup to Ruby Amethyst.
Oh, absolutely. One thing that's going on here, so Matthew Burns' hand is actually pretty good to play out this game. He's got the Turbo Dollars, he's got the Sisu, but he has a lot of the tricksy stuff that I talked about, kind of like the mid-range fight here. He's going to draw some extra cards here, maybe get some value of playing cards a second time.
Immerhin kann jetzt noch 3 Lore machen, aber ich fürchte, dass wenn Brennan...
in his hand, I believe. I think I caught a sight of that earlier. The thing about this is,
Brennan hat mindestens noch den
you
Hierer.
have something like Be Prepared in your opening hand, that's actually not the best place to have it.
Yeah, you don't want it on turn 1. You want it like on turn 5 or 6. So it's
kann jetzt gleich erstmal
einen
6 drauf machen, wenn einen hat.
Is like you can't always count on having
glaube, hat welche.
Because you are only playing it on turn 7, the earliest things possible.
Also dieser 4-1er ist echt lustig.
Let's say he could have that card, his deck would play a lot sooner because he's usually going to have the ink advantage. But also, he's most likely to have played a whole
Oder ist das Baboom?
Ja,
das ist der 4-1er.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And
die Frage ist, was machst du jetzt?
We saw last game where
Weil hat nur so 5er, die alle nicht so geil sind.
But he wasn't able to hold on
kann
to
Beast
them,
jetzt legen.
When he had 7 ink because
aber das ist ja nicht awesome.
A whole new world.
Wahrscheinlich macht er so, macht er mal Tor in die Tinte.
Looks like it might be King Undisputed
macht er nicht jetzt noch diesen, wie heißt der, Argus?
Is a good one for him
Kahn in die Tinte.
Yeah, it's a really good one.
Nee,
macht er nicht.
Oh, there's the Be Prepared.
Er spielt einfach kein Ink.
He could definitely navigate
das finde ich super random.
To where, Be King
ich hätte auch diesen Two-Drop noch gelinkt.
Character you want to, because the way this game plays out, a lot of times it's not like the one we saw in game 1 where there's a bunch of characters left over. Generally, it's one you have to sing, and then he can trade in with like a fox and a couple other things, or one other thing maybe, and then kind of make the choice for Brennan. Like it says choose, but he doesn't actually get to choose.
He doesn't actually choose.
Yeah. So like that's one thing you're seeing here. 5-drop Beast, not amazing in this matchup, right? You're not destroying an item ever, obviously, but it is something that can sing all of your songs.
Yep.
It is big enough to trade with practically everything from Matthew Burns, which is great.
Ja, es kann traden mit Sisu, es kann Merlin überfahren, aber so wirklich toll ist das alles nicht. Jetzt gerade sieht es noch relativ gut von Matthew aus, bis dann das AWN kommt. Ich verstehe nicht, warum Brennan nicht geinkt hat. Weg ist es.
I like this from Matthew. Like he saw
ja,
that
das
in
ist
game
stark.
1. It got out of hand when Brennan got multiple characters into play. Let's make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Was machst du jetzt?
Especially because it was just that one character on board. He knew that was going to be the one that's going to go. The other great thing.
I don't know if Sisu in Wirklichkeit. Did he actually be king if there were lions around? I'm not sure.
I don't know. I mean, he is king of the castle.
Yeah, but he's king of a castle. The lions are king of everything the light touches.
Fair enough.
That's so much more than a castle.
It's true. Yes.
Plus, Matthew has castle in his deck, so there's like that thing too. Like,
Er hat noch Ultimator. Mach doch mal den Cogsworth in die Tinte oder diesen 4-1er.
How Brennan.
Er versucht so, ja.
He also has a Cogsworth, I see. He's got some good stuff over there.
Er würde gerne so Doppel-Grab Sword machen, aber er muss dafür mal einen Charakter landen. Weil für 10 wird er es nicht machen. Aber wenn er den Cogsworth ausspielt und der überlebt, den kann er ja jetzt mal legen. King Undisputed ist schon abgearbeitet worden vom Beast. Eigentlich ist natürlich das Beast abgearbeitet worden vom King Undisputed, aber man kann es theoretisch auch andersrum betrachten. Fragt mal Felix Schneiders, falls ihn einer kennt. Der war der Champion da drin.
sing plus play a character
mit seinem Charakter dein Removal zu besiegen. Was hat er denn jetzt reingelegt? Noch den Tamator? Er hat immer noch diesen unsäglichen 4-1er auf der Hand. Vielleicht will er den halt echt gleich irgendwann noch so legen. Nächste Runde, grab your sword und 4-1er und die Karte von oben in den Inkpool. Aber ist das dann geil? Er hat jetzt schon 2 Tamatora geinkt.
Ward, which everyone is just, gets really frustrated with that ward. But he has another fun ability.
Aha, Cogsworth wird überleben und gleich Doppel Grab Your Sword wird alles clearen. Ist interessant. Dann ist er aber immer noch behind.
So Resist is a great ability. It's super powerful. This deck utilizes it almost never. like almost never comes up. You're not into combat too much. Cogsworth usually sings, which I don't know if Cogsworth has a great voice. I don't think it's a song I'd want to hear.
He doesn't. He dances a little bit in Be Our Guest, but he doesn't sing too much.
Yeah, he's more of a background dancer, a background singer.
Yes.
Yeah. It'd be like if I were to ask to sing, you do not want me on the main mic, please. Nobody wants that.
Ja.
You're not going to sing Be Prepared.
Jetzt Doppel Grab Your Sword?
Absolutely not.
All right. But he has gotten that character to stick, so now he has a character that can sing. Like you said, Cogsworth is often used for singing.
Yeah, I love starting with Popsicle here for multiple reasons.
Ja, jetzt Doppel Grab Your Sword. Jetzt sind 4-1er endlich in die Tinte.
Ja. Grab Your Swords?
Brennan,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, he sang one and
played the other.
Yeah. So I was going to say, I love starting with Popsicle here because if you have Grab Your Swords, and if he were to draw into exactly Tinkerbell there, he could take over the entire side of the board from his opponent. But, hey, second Grab Your Swords does pretty much the same thing.
That's the same thing. Yeah, that was, Double Grab Your Swords took care of everything on Matthew's side of the board. He had those Sisus that were out.
So hat man natürlich Boardwipe doch auch mit Stahl.
Matthew's got to be feeling pretty bummed out right now.
Yeah, and so here's the thing. Matthew's bummed out, but he is at a
12-0
range.
Yes.
I am big on saying that this doesn't always tell you. And look, there's another beacon on his speed, so it actually answers the Cogwork. So you see the Brawl stranded in his hand. This is something I talked about coming into this matchup. You can get into some spots where, and you see him inking the Brawl.
Ja, jetzt kommt natürlich der AWNW.
Like,
guckt nicht mal an, fast. Hat ganz kurz doch noch geguckt, was es ist. Ich hätte auch geguckt, was es ist, eventuell halt zu inken, einfach so. Aber naja, vielleicht hat er es doch schon gesehen, keine Ahnung. Aber es sah aus, als ob er die oberste Karte einfach reingemacht hätte mit dem Quill.
Really pushed his advantage too much from this spot, but hopefully this Brave New World will give him a better chance of doing that.
Yeah. One thing I will note is that, Cogsworth, who is down on the board, has wards, so you can't choose that character
das geht
for
nicht,
anything.
Oder?
But the great thing about being undisputed is that it says your opponent chooses. And so it kind of gets around ward.
Also, I want to point out, Brennan
jetzt kommt noch erstmal Brawl, oder?
For here this turn, and this shows an understanding from both the players. We saw Brawls
weil noch ein AWNW hat.
Yes.
Like, look, we know where this cards go in the matchup, and yeah, they're fine a lot of times, but this is where they're normally going to. And yeah, that's a Bell from
kann man doch super brawlen.
And I think that he's sitting at
UFC-Style super Brawl.
10 ink now. He is at 10 ink, which means that Belle, she's strange but special and
ja, sie wäre jetzt especially powerful gewesen für 5.
I may have gotten a little too hasty with the Brawl talk because,
there was another one.
Yeah, he added Bells literally last night or like the day before. He usually never plays this card. This was not in his version from
jetzt nächste Runde kommt wahrscheinlich erstmal Cogsworth und Tinkerbell oder so.
But in general, that's kind
of
how
noch ein AWNW.
Trying to say.
Yeah, those Brawls are so powerful and yeah, he put one.
So lucky, dass er Turn 3 noch Fischpunkt will hatte, nachdem er 3 Stück schon geinkt hatte.
Kind of as a decoy.
That's actually a really good point. Honestly, with us, putting your ink face up, it's very telling. If you pay attention to what your opponent's inking, you can get some information about their hand.
Absolutely.
About the full range of what they can possibly do, what they're thinking, what's likely to happen here. And look,
aber ja klar, es kommt ja jetzt, wie gesagt, Tinkerbell, probably und Cogsworth. Ja, One-Jump Ahead wird mit dem Quill reingetan. Ich glaube, Let It Go braucht man noch nicht zu inken.
He only has 2 strength, but, well, so now, of course, he's not going to get that 3 lore gain because we have the Tinkerbell and Cogsworth that came down, which both
einfach mal so für 11 rausgelegt.
So,
das inkt er sogar doch noch. Weil er nächste Runde AWNW machen wird. Und definitiv nicht Let It Go. Let It Go ist, glaube ich, einfach nicht so gut in diesem Matchup. Dieses Ruby Amethyst hat keine mega großen Kreaturen, Charaktere. die man damit dringend zur Tinte machen wollte. Und deswegen kann man das jetzt ruhig schon mal reinlegen, dann kann man nächsten Runde noch mehr Ink legen, nachdem man das ABMW gemacht hat. Wieder Cogsworth will es singen.
More ink, and we do see that be prepared.
Na, be prepared kommt leider doch erstmal, aber egal, dann halt ABMW für 5.
Before you pass it to your opponent, that really puts you in a good position.
Especially being at the 14-0 point here, like I actually do think that Matt is not in a horrible spot here. Generally, I actually don't care about the lore lead until it gets to really bad when I'm blue steel. Speaking of
another whole new world.
And I think that means there's no be prepareds left, if I remember right, because Brennan was going through the discard pile for Matthew Burns, and I think there were 2 in there already, plus the one he just played.
Waren da echt schon 2 drin? War es nicht Game 1, wo 2 Stück abgeworfen wurden, oder jetzt schon wieder?
But Matthew Burns is about to get to the danger zone of lore if you're on the other side of the board for any deck, where once they start to get to about 17,
jetzt noch Hiram?
18,
yeah, wow.
You run the risk of being of losing the game to them not even having to quest.
Yeah.
But doing some kind of goat tricks. Yeah, goat shenanigans is a better word for goats. Yeah.
Goat shenanigans. I think
more Cogsworth, okay.
Castle in his hand, which might be an interesting
das
card
Queen's
to put
Castle
down.
ist jetzt echt
Another
gut.
card that's great here, Brennan doesn't have a way to challenge that or kill it right away as far as what we know. Nothing on board can challenge it down.
Wobei, wenn Brennan den Long Game Zeus findet oder Rise of the Titans.
Has to have that card in the spot.
Hat er in den Long Game Zeus? Ich glaube ja. Das heißt, da ist das Castle nicht mal so gut. Cogsworth wird das einfach abarbeiten. Oder? Was ist das denn? Oder sind das noch? Doch, er hat in den Long Game Zeus. Das heißt, die Castles machen einfach jetzt auch nichts.
I think the cost of cards to see what can I put out here? What can I play? So we're gonna brawl on Flaversham.
That was a how much do I have left over after I have to play this brawl that I have to play?
What can I still get done?
What can I still afford? Yeah.
I was okay. So that's the Flynn coming down, which that's an interesting because Cogsworth
jetzt noch Snake
has more
oder was?
strength than Flynn. What are your thoughts here about him playing the Flynn in this position?
I think this is just about being ink efficient at this point. He's
Jetzt
getting
noch
enough
Ink?
stuff into play. Plus,
Ich würde fast sagen, weil was ist das da für 4? Ja, was wird es denn sein? Bestimmt Goat, oder?
Quest of both of these, he goes up to 16, and we talked about
Kann man
the
sich
16,
irgendwie
17,
sehen?
18. These are the numbers where Brennan really has to worry, and you start to put the pressure on Brennan with, you want to put him in the spot where, hey, look, you don't just get to do whatever you want.
Matthew hat irgendwas für 4 auf der Hand mit Tintensymbol. Was könnte es denn alles sein? Ich glaube, eigentlich fällt mir nur Goat ein.
Matthew has really become the aggressor here, and Brennan has to have the answers.
Yes, and eventually they will run out. You know, we've already seen multiple grab your swords. We've already seen some Tinkerbells. Sometimes all their stuff doesn't line up perfectly in one turn. They do draw a ton of cards, and he has a ton of ink, but you can make them have to do these things, and sometimes they can't answer it correctly.
Ja, Brennan zieht es sich noch rein.
Rebecca, you just need that one turn.
Diesen 4-1er finde ich echt interessant. Den kann man natürlich Turn 2 legen. Er stellt dann den Flynn Rider und so erstmal ab. Kann auch den Sisu 3-Drop herausfordern und verbannen. Aber ansonsten, ich weiß ja nicht.
And he just has so much ink, and he has a lot of options there in his hand. Trying to see what else he has.
So
another Cogsworth, Lucky Dime.
I think I see multiple along came Zeuses, and we're going to see how threatened Brennan really feels this turn.
Yeah.
I would be tempted to start firing off some of these along came Zeuses to keep the lore count as low as possible, but he also might. The thing is, that comes with opportunity. If you're using your ink to do that, then you're not developing.
Die Long Game Zeus würde ich, glaube ich, jetzt noch nicht rauslassen. Why? 14 Uhr ist ja voll viel am Ende doch.
No
Tamatoa, which and he has that Lucky Dime in hand.
Hat er nicht Feld 2 Tamatoa schon geinkt?
Looks like he is going
Doch,
to.
hat er. Deswegen ist es nicht so, als ob er noch keinen gefunden hätte. Er hat nur den dritten noch nicht gefunden. Aber das ist ja auch nicht so unwahrscheinlich. Auch wenn man so viel zieht. Wow, es kommt sogar noch 4-1er.
Also, I think we talked about this. We think there's no more be prepareds.
Right, we think, but
so Brennan, the gates are open. You can play all the characters that you want. So here's what he kind of split the difference of what I was talking about. He kept the lore count low on his opponent's side, got rid of one of the better characters that could challenge if he wanted to do something like that, but also started to develop his own lore.
Dieser Argus ist ja echt spektakulär.
He is starting to get worried. You can tell in the way that turn was played that he's a little worried that he's getting to the point, and we can see why right here in the front of Matthew Burns' hand. This is why he needs to be a little bit worried.
Yeah, those goat shenanigans, and he does even have a snake in hand as well, which means he could start bouncing that goat back and forth. And when you're starting to get close to 20, which there's that goat. There's that goat.
This is the scary part. When they have this much ink, when Matthew Burns has this much ink and leads on goat, you know it's not going to stay in play. He's going to get 2 lore off this card, And yeah, there we go. Madam Mim, pick up, gain another lore
16,
here.
17.
Next turn is likely to happen again. So that's 2
Frenemy
more
wird
this
bestimmt
turn you
reinkommen
can't
für
interact
1.
with in any way. And the next turn, probably 2 more that you can't interact with anyway. So that means, at this point, if anything
Das
starts
sieht
to
doch gut aus für Matthew, weil so viel auch schon gegaint hat.
So this went from a really power position on Brennan as early as a few turns ago to
Dass Brennan DeCandio diese Tamatuas
Yeah, and because he doesn't have anything exerted over on Matthew's side of the board, Brennan can't challenge, so he does have that other Along Came Zeus.
Ich würde mal
but
aber
he
noch
needs to
einen
have
machen mit
some
dem Flynn
other
Rider.
way to answer what Matthew has on his side of the board.
Absolutely, and the problem is I don't know if he's going to be able to cobble it all together here. And we'll say I think a Fox just got picked up from Matthew here too, so that's another way for him to bounce the go. That's exactly what he needed.
That's what he needed, yeah, because he didn't have another Madam Mim in hand, and so putting that Maleficent down, he did Inca Castle, but that extra card off of Maleficent was worth it.
Yeah, and there was a turn or two earlier here that I was wondering about the ink usage of Brennan.
Ich wüsste gerne mal, wie viel Ink er hat. Aber das ist leider unwissbar. Es ist zwar relativ viel, aber bestimmt nicht genug für Tamatoa, Lucky Diamond und Activate. Und es wäre auch nicht wirklich viel jetzt inzwischen mehr. Jetzt könnte man erstmal noch so... Baboom rauslassen auf Maleficent.
Yeah. I mean,
dann noch deine Long Time Zeus auf die Snake.
Has that goat in hand. Brendan has got to be sweating it right now because really, if he is able to bounce the goat,
aber ja klar, hat er nächste Runde noch nicht genug für Goat und Fox und Goat, aber er kann einfach Goat und Fox und Go machen. Und dann muss schon der AWNW kommen.
They're not zero.
They're pretty high, and that's even if you answer everything on the board here, because Brennan, look, he's readjusting all of his ink.
Ich fürchte, da geht nichts.
Okay, Baboom on Maleficent and the
Double
Flynn.
Baboom.
So it takes care of these. He cannot let him quest. That's the biggest thing.
Nice, yeah, and he's going to sing Along Came Zeus on the Snake. So, yeah, so even if you could bounce the goat, that's only 2 lore. That puts Matthew at 19. And so you've saved yourself 1 more turn to try to do something.
Yeah, if you had left any characters in play,
jetzt noch 2.
Next turn. Now this at least buys you 1 turn, unless something really crazy happens. Like, I don't know if you can go, like, goat, bounce goat, play goat,
das heißt
play
jetzt,
goat. Like if you draw a second goat, I don't think he has enough ink for all that.
If he draws
könnte er theoretisch nächste Runde schon gewinnen. 10, 12, 14. Das heißt, Bell reicht nicht.
Which, by the way, drew the second goat.
Tamatoa würde reichen wahrscheinlich.
So second goat. I think an unlosable spot for Matthew Burris.
I don't know if he can bounce it a second time though, because he has a fox. He doesn't have a snake.
So the thing is here though, the second copy allows him to put it in harm's way. He's fine with it being in play. So let's say.
Spiel einfach den zweiten noch aus.
Gain 1 here. That puts him up to 18. He's going to play Madam Mim. That's going to put him up to 19.
Oder so.
This means that Brennan now has to answer.
Wobei das halt auch so eine Sache ist. Weil wenn Brennan jetzt AWNW macht, dann kann er die beiden abwerfen. Warum hat er nicht einen zweiten Goat? Ich meinte nämlich wohl. Ne, das andere ist Rabbit. Nee, jetzt kommt Goat in die Tinte. Doch, er hatte 2 Goat. Wenn er die einfach beide rausgelegt hätte, dann hätte nichts passieren können.
So that means that there's a plan that is probably deterministic from this point of winning the game. So at 19, and so
Deterministic, was ein Trash-Gelaber.
No more goats, right? Like we saw the goat. He doesn't know about the second copy.
He doesn't know about the second goat. You're right. Yeah.
And so if there's no Tamatoa here, there's no chance that he can win this turn, that he can get up to enough lore. And so I think Brennan's going to
have to kann schon erstmal noch Portsieger machen.
Of it. What are the odds of me being able to play enough items, find a Tamatoa, activate Lucky
definitiv erstmal vor die
and
Sphere.
I don't know if he has enough ink to do all of that, though starting off with the Sphere, that's a good start. If he were to go like running spheres into popsicles into it, maybe he could find a way to get 12 lore this turn.
Yeah, he has 6.
Jetzt er doch noch auf 9, auf 14.
Right now, which would put him
Der Tamatoa holt ihm noch einen aus dem Graveyard zurück. Das heißt, er muss noch 2 Items irgendwie nachgezogen haben. Aber nee, er kann es nicht.
Also a couple Tinkerbells now. Look, this isn't bad here. The Tinkerbells combined with something else can beat the face-up thing that he knows here. He can start to clear the board from Madam Mim and Chernobog's followers. If there's no goat in the other hand,
aber leider.
Matthew's hand, then you're still okay for a turn.
Matthew hat noch einen Goat. Aber ich finde dieses Play crazy. Er hätte jetzt echt das Goat an den AWNW verlieren können. Wenn er einfach beide Goats gelegt hätte, der nächste Runde gewonnen gehabt, for sure.
Goat in the inkwell was to make Brennan feel like he was a little safe here.
Yeah, the thing is like, it probably won't even matter in the long run. It doesn't really, hide any information other than the fact that, like, if I see that, I would actually pretty much assume you have a second goat.
Man weiß es.
Goat's just going to do it. And